Grass cut taller keeps more of its leaf surface. More leaf surface means more photosynthesis. More photosynthesis means more energy available to send downward to the root tips. In June, when the soil is still warm enough for active root growth but not yet hot enough to suppress it, those root tips are capable of extending deeper into the soil if they have the energy to do so. A lawn mowed at 4 inches in June has a fundamentally different root architecture by August than a lawn mowed at 2 inches through the same period. The 4-inch lawn has roots that reach water that the 2-inch lawn has never accessed. When August comes without rain, the 4-inch lawn browses that deeper moisture and stays green for 2 weeks longer than its neighbor. The taller grass also shades the soil surface. Shaded soil is cooler soil. Cooler soil loses moisture more slowly, and weed seeds that land on shaded soil have a much harder time germinating than those that land on exposed, sun-baked soil. Raising the mowing height in June costs nothing. It requires one adjustment to the mower deck, and it sets the lawn up for summer in a way that no fertilizer or irrigation system can match. I want to say something about the 1/3 rule here because it applies to June in a particular way. You should never remove more than 1/3 of the grass blade in a single mowing at any time of year. In June, this matters especially because the growth rate is slowing. If you let the grass get ahead of you in early June and it reaches 5 or 6 inches before you mow it, you must not cut it all the way down to 3 inches in one pass. That sends the plant into a recovery response that pulls energy from the roots at exactly the time those roots should be deepening. 2 passes, 3 to 4 days apart, getting down to the target height gradually. It takes more time. It is worth the time. The second thing we do in June is stop fertilizing with nitrogen. I know this is the opposite of what most lawn programs recommend. The bags on the shelf at the hardware store, the programs sold by the lawn companies, they all include a late spring or early summer fertilizer application. And there is a logic to it. The grass is growing. Nitrogen makes grass grow. Apply nitrogen in late spring and watch the grass respond. The problem is what that nitrogen does to the grass in the weeks that follow the application. It forces a flush of rapid green leafy growth. That flush of growth requires water to sustain it. It requires energy from the root system to support it. It is a withdrawal from the root reserves at exactly the time those reserves should be building towards summer. A lawn that receives a heavy nitrogen application in late May or early June enters summer with lush, soft growth that is highly susceptible to heat stress and fungal disease, and with root reserves that have been spent on supporting that growth rather than building the depth that summer demands. What we do instead is feed the soil rather than the grass. A thin layer of compost spread across the lawn in early June, no more than a 1/4 inch, breaks down slowly through the summer and feeds the soil organisms that support grass health at a biological level rather than forcing rapid growth. The grass does not get the visible 2-week burst of green that nitrogen provides. What it gets instead is sustained biological support through the whole of summer. The difference between those two outcomes is most visible in September, when the nitrogen-fed lawn is tired and thin, and the compost-fed lawn is still looking like a lawn. Produce surface compaction that limits water infiltration, limits root depth, and creates exactly the conditions that favor weeds over grass. The check is simple. Push a screwdriver or a piece of thin metal rod into the soil. In healthy, uncompacted soil, it should slide in to 6 inches with moderate hand pressure. In compacted soil, you will feel significant resistance at 2 or 3 inches. If you have compaction, June is an appropriate time to core aerate because the grass is actively growing and will recover from the aeration holes quickly. The holes left by core aeration are more than just channels for air and water. They are openings where compost can be worked in directly to the depth of the root zone, which accelerates the soil improvement in compacted areas significantly compared to top dressing alone. If you do not have a core aerator and do not want to rent one, a garden fork pushed into the soil every 6 inches across the compacted area produces meaningful relief, particularly if compost is worked into the holes. It is more labor-intensive than a machine aerator. It also does not require renting a machine. The fifth thing we do in June is look very carefully at where the clover is growing. Clover is a nitrogen fixer. It takes nitrogen from the air and deposits it in the soil through bacteria in its root nodules. Where clover is growing thickly in a lawn, that area is telling you that the soil nitrogen in those spots is lower than what the grass prefers. Clover fills the gap that the grass cannot fill. Rather than treating the clover as a weed to be removed, we read it as an indicator of where the lawn needs biological support. Sometimes that means simply allowing the clover to continue doing its work of nitrogen fixation. Sometimes it means investigating why that area has lower nitrogen, which can indicate compaction, poor drainage, or a patch where the soil biology is less active than surrounding areas. The sixth thing we do in June is water the lawn for the last time in a particular way. Something I have noticed over the years about the clover distribution in a lawn is that it often follows the pattern of foot traffic, drainage, and tree root competition in ways that tell you a great deal about the soil if you are willing to read it. A strip of thick clover along the edge of a path tells you that foot traffic has compacted the soil along that edge. A circle of thick clover under a tree often indicates that the tree roots are taking up available nitrogen, leaving the grass in that area nitrogen poor. Reading the clover is a map of the soil conditions under your lawn, and the more time you spend reading it, the more specific your understanding of your own particular ground becomes. There is no soil test that tells you what the clover tells you. The sixth thing we do in June is water the lawn for the last time in a particular way. In late June, before the heat of July fully arrives, we give the lawn one deep watering that is meant specifically to encourage roots downward. We water for a long time, long enough that water penetrates to 6 to 8 inches below the soil surface. We then do not water again for 10 to 14 days, unless we have young seedlings that need daily moisture. This extended dry period after a deep watering forces grass roots to follow the remaining deep moisture, extending downward past where shallow watering has trained them to stay. It is a practice we call training the roots. It is the single most important thing you can do in June to prepare the lawn for a dry July and August. I have seen this comparison play out side by side more than once in my years, and it is always the same. In June, the fertilized neighbor's lawn looks better than ours. It is greener. It is thicker in appearance. People comment on it. By August, when the rain has not come and the heat has not let up, that lawn is brown and thin and exhausted. Ours is still carrying some green. By September, when cool weather returns and the grass should be recovering vigorously, the fertilized lawn is slow to come back because the root system was never deep enough to sustain it. Ours recovers fully within 3 weeks of the first fall rain. I have watched this pattern enough times that it no longer surprises me, but it surprises my neighbors every year without fail. The third thing we do in June is overseed the thin spots. June is not the ideal month for seeding. The ideal months are September for cool season grasses and late spring for warm season grasses. But June is the month when thin spots become visible because the spring growth surge has shown you exactly where the lawn has gaps. A bare patch that was invisible under a mat of winter debris becomes clear in June when the grass around it is thick and actively growing, and the bare spot is obviously bare. We address those thin spots in June, not with an expectation that the seed will establish perfectly in summer heat, but because some coverage is better than none, and because grass seed that germinates in June and establishes through summer, however slowly and partially, arrives at September with roots already in the ground rather than starting from nothing. We scratch the surface lightly with a rake, press seed into contact with the soil, cover with a thin layer of compost, and water daily until germination. Not all of it takes. Some of it does. By September, those spots have something growing in them rather than bare soil inviting weeds. The fourth thing we do in June is check for and address soil compaction. I want to say one more thing about the thin spots in the June seeding, because I know it can be discouraging to put seed down and not see a full stand emerge in summer heat. The expectation should be managed. What June seeding produces is not a perfect lawn in the thin spots. It produces the beginning of a root system in those spots that will be ready to support vigorous growth when September comes. A spot that was bare in June and received even partial seeding will look dramatically better by October than a spot that was bare in June and received nothing until September seeding. The head start matters. It is not a complete solution. It is a head start, and head starts compound. The fourth thing we do in June is check for and address soil compaction. Compaction is the silent problem under most residential lawns. The freeze-thaw cycles of winter and the weight of foot traffic through spring combine to produce surface compaction that limits water infiltration, limits root depth, and creates exactly the conditions that favor weeds over grass. The check is simple. Push a screwdriver or a piece of thin metal rod into the soil. In healthy uncompacted soil, it should slide in to 6 inches with moderate hand pressure. In compacted soil, you will feel significant resistance at 2 or 3 inches. If you have compaction, June is an appropriate time to core aerate because the grass is actively growing and will recover from the aeration holes quickly. If you do not have a core aerator and do not want to rent one, a garden fork pushed into the soil every 6 inches across the compacted area produces meaningful relief, particularly if compost is worked into the holes. Compaction is the silent problem under most residential lawns. The freeze-thaw cycles of winter and the weight of foot traffic through spring combine to June is the month that separates the lawns that are going to struggle through summer from the lawns that are going to carry their green through August without much help from anyone. I have watched this happen for more years than I can easily count. I did not understand this when I was young. My father understood it. His father understood it. The knowledge came from watching, season after season, which lawns held their green through August and which did not, and then working backward from the outcome to understand what had happened in June. Most of what I know about June lawns I learned from watching and from being told what to watch for. I want to pass that along to you now. The difference between those two kinds of lawns is rarely the grass seed that was used or the soil that was there to start with. The difference is almost always what happened in June, or more often, what did not happen in June because nobody knew it needed to happen. In my community, June is not the month you sit back and admire what you planted in spring. I want to say something about why June in particular matters so much, because I think most people do not think of it as a critical month. They think of spring as the important time, when the ground wakes up and the grass begins to grow, and they think of fall as the important time, when the last mowing happens and the lawn goes to sleep. June falls between those two seasons of obvious activity, and so it goes unnoticed. But June is when the decisions are made. The grass is making decisions in June about how deep to push its roots before the heat arrives. The soil is making decisions about what organisms it can support through summer. The lawn is organizing itself for what is coming, and what you do or do not do in June either supports that organization or interrupts it. Most people interrupt it without knowing they are doing it, which is why I'm sharing this with you today. In my community, June is not the month you sit back and admire what you planted in spring. June is the month you set the lawn up for what comes next. What comes next is the hardest stretch of the year for grass. July heat, August drought, the long weeks when the rain does not come and the sun does not stop, and a lawn that was not prepared for it in June will tell you in no uncertain terms what it needed and did not get. I want to share with you what we do in June. Not because it is complicated, it is not complicated, but because most of what is sold to homeowners for June lawn care is either unnecessary or counterproductive. And the things that are actually necessary are simple and free and not sold by anyone. The first thing we do in June is raise the mowing height. By June, the cool season grasses that make up most northern lawns have finished their most vigorous spring growth phase. The long days and warming soil of late spring have triggered a flush of growth that will not repeat itself in quite the same way until early fall. As June progresses and the soil begins to warm towards summer temperatures, that growth rate slows. The grass is beginning, slowly, to shift from the sprint of spring into the endurance mode of summer. This is exactly the wrong time to keep mowing short, and yet it is the time when most homeowners maintain the same mowing height they have used all spring, or sometimes cut shorter because the lawn needs mowing less often and they want to extend the interval between cuts. We raise the mowing deck in June. From whatever height we have been mowing in spring, we go up at least half an inch, often a full inch. If we were mowing at 2.5 inches in May, we mow at 3 to 3.5 inches starting in June. If we were mowing at 3 inches, we go to 3.5 or 4. The reason is the root system. When we return to watering after those 10 to 14 days, we water deeply again and then wait again. We are not establishing a schedule. We are responding to what the lawn is telling us. When the grass begins to take on a bluish cast and when footprints remain visible in the lawn rather than springing back, those are the signs that it is time to water, not before. The seventh thing we do in June is remove any aggressive weeds before they set seed. I want to talk about the deep watering practice in a little more detail, because I understand that most people have been told to water frequently and briefly, and the idea of not watering for 10 to 14 days after a deep soak feels wrong to them. It feels like neglect. I want to tell you that it is not neglect. It is training. Think about what you are asking the grass to do when you water a little every day. You are telling it that moisture is always available at the surface. The roots respond to that message by staying shallow. When you water deeply and then withhold water for 2 weeks, you are telling the grass that the only moisture available is the moisture deep in the soil. The roots respond to that message by growing toward it. That is training. That's what June is for. The seventh thing we do in June is remove any aggressive weeds before they set seed. Annual weeds that germinated in the warmth of late spring are approaching their seed-setting period in June. A dandelion going to seed in June will put thousands of seeds into your lawn that will germinate in September when conditions are optimal for them. A crabgrass plant that sets seed in July produces seeds that remain viable in the soil for 5 years. Removing these plants before they set seed is a multiplier on all the other work you do because it reduces the weed seed pressure in the soil that all future lawn management will have to contend with. We do not spray for weeds. We pull them or hoe them at the soil surface before they seed. It takes longer than spraying in the short term. Over 3 or 4 seasons, a lawn maintained this way has progressively less weed pressure each year because the seed bank is being depleted without being replenished. A lawn maintained with herbicide spray has weed seed pressure that stays roughly constant because new seeds from surrounding areas replace the ones controlled by the spray. The eighth and final thing we do in June is nothing. I want to tell you about the weeds specifically because I think there is a right way and a wrong way to approach them, even when you are doing it by hand. The right way is to remove the whole plant before it sets seed, and then to leave the ground in that spot covered. Do not leave bare soil where you pulled a weed. That bare soil is an invitation for the next weed. If the grass around the pulled spot is thick enough to fill in, leave it. If it is thin around the spot, press a small amount of compost and seed into the gap immediately. You are not just removing a weed, you are replacing it with something that does not leave an opening for the next one. That practice, followed consistently, is what gradually shifts a lawn from a place that weeds establish easily to a place where they find few openings. The eighth and final thing we do in June is nothing. I mean this specifically. June is the month when the lawn is going to receive its hardest test of the year, and the instinct of most people when a lawn begins to show any stress is to do something. Apply something, add something, treat something. What a June lawn in the early stages of summer dormancy preparation actually needs from you is to be left alone to do what it is doing. The grass knows that summer is coming. The roots that are reaching downward in June are reaching for a reason. The growth that is slowing in June is slowing for a reason. Interrupting these preparations with unnecessary applications, with extra nitrogen, with extra water that prevents the root training we discussed, is the most common mistake I see made in June lawns. Do what I have described. Raise the mowing height, stop the nitrogen, address compaction if it exists, read the clover. Train the roots with 1 deep watering and a long dry period. Remove weeds before they seed, and then do nothing else. Let June do what June is for. The lawn that you leave alone to prepare itself in June is the lawn that surprises you in August by still being green when everything around it is not? Drop a comment and tell me what your lawn looks like in June and what you have been doing to it. I rate every comment. Give this a thumbs up if something I said was useful to you. And if you want to hear more of what I have learned from a lifetime of watching the land, please subscribe. I will share more. I want to leave you with something my father said to me about June that I have thought about many times since. He said that the hardest thing he ever had to learn about farming was the difference between the activity that helps and the activity that only makes the person doing it feel useful. June, he said, is the month when most people do the second kind instead of the first kind, because the lawn is going to look fine for another few weeks, regardless of what you do to it. And so it is easy to mistake the absence of visible problems for the absence of need. The lawn does not need you to do more in June. It needs you to do the right things and then get out of its way and let it prepare itself for what is coming. Do that, and August will tell you in plain language that you made the right choice. Drop a comment and tell me what your lawn looks like in June and what you have been doing to it. I read every comment. Give this a thumbs up if something I said was useful to you. And if you want to hear more of what I have learned from a lifetime of watching the land, please subscribe. I will share more.